a couple slides that you've seen before, so bear with me, because what I actually want to get down to is the fact that we've got a new brochure that we're going to be using on a pretty regular basis, and I want to show you that, and I want to get them in your hands. I'll email them to you. It's a three-part tripod, and it's I think it's kind of what we've been needing for a long time, so we'll get into that also. So, and it's called the Incredible Equity Holding Trust Transfer. Very clever name there, by the way, since that's what we call everything. So let's get into a little bit of the basics of what we're doing. I want to recognize the early birds today. Alan Burkhart and Alan Merriman and Cal Shindell and Carl, Dr. Carl Ahmet, one of my most favorite people of the world, and there's J.E., one of the I don't know about age-wise, but he's one of our oldest members, been around for a long time, and I love it every time I see his name show up on the membership roster. Kevin Scott, another all-time member. Deloy Wilson, another one. Matt Lipitsky, Miho, Michael, and Mike Minahan, Pablo, that's Pablo Uresti, and Paul Benavente, Stephen Bernard, and thank you guys for being the early birds this morning. Appreciate it. We should have a pretty good group on this morning because we usually get 2 to 3 times the early birds. We have currently, thanks to Diane Stewart, we've got about 140 people registered, but that usually means that we're going to get half of that or less on our calls. So if you're in, hold on a second. This might be one of those people calling to say, how do I get out of your call? Hang on a minute. Whoops. Well, I guess not. Huh. Okay, so let's go ahead and get things started. And once again, I want to thank Diane Stewart for being there and getting things rolling for us. So here's the deal. You know, this is the slide presentation I want to show you today is something that you've seen before. Most of you have seen before, and it's kind of basic and from the beginner's standpoint. So bear with me for 15 minutes on that. We'll get into some new stuff. We'll get into some new old stuff and see if we can't make some money today. So let's talk about innovative financing in general. Now, the term, you can use that word, innovative financing, if you want to, but the word creative financing is the one that's most often used, but you don't want to use the word creative financing when you're talking to a real estate broker or a real estate agent, because from the moment that they're born, real estate agents and brokers, the term creative financing is a no-no. And the reason for that is there have been so many scams perpetrated on so many people over the years that when they hear the term creative financing, they're thinking of, well, that's violating a due on sale clause, and that's lease options, and that's going to get us sued, and there's nothing more litigious than these kinds of transactions where real estate agents go out and try to circumvent the regulations and what have you. So if you bring up the word, if you're a real estate agent, you bring up the word creative financing to your broker, they'll probably hire somebody else and give your desk away. So remember that when we talk about it, it is creative, but it's as innovative as creative. And the way we do it, we want to avoid completely all of those risks and pitfalls that are so commonly associated with that term. So you have to go in and ask yourself, you know, and what a broker is going to say, if you're a real estate agent working under a broker, and say, well, is it illegal? No, it's not legal because you've got to violate a due on sale clause. Is it safe? No, because every time we've gotten sued in the past, it's been because somebody trying to do creative financing. Is it dangerous? Well, of course it's dangerous, because if you do creative financing, somebody's going to get hurt, somebody's going to get sued. Is it risky? Of course it is, because in this kind of creative financing, you don't have enough involved to be able to hold somebody to the task of making payments every month and so forth. Is it profitable? Well, the only people who ever make any money on it are those people who make a bunch of money and then run out of town in order to avoid the pitfalls. And is it fair to all parties? And most brokers who've been around a while say, no, it's not, because somebody's going to get screwed. If it's creative, that means you've got a charlatan on one end of the deal in every case. Well, what we want to do is be able to do innovative financing for real estate. That's buying real estate, selling real estate, managing real estate. And we want to do it fully legally and 100% safely and without the dangers and risks and pitfalls. And we want to make a significant sum of money doing it. And we want to make sure that it's fair. You know, in my book, Making It Big and Keeping It This Time, and going from zero to big, we talk about the fairness. And in everything we do, we want it to be cookie cutter. In other words, if you got two kids and about the same age and you're going to give them a cookie from the cookie jar, but you only have one cookie, and then they're going to have to divide it. And if you want to make it a perfect division, you give one of them the right to choose which half of the cookie he wants, and the other one the right to cut the cookie in half. And when you do that, all of a sudden it's amazing that that cookie comes out meticulously 50-50, not an extra crumb on either side. So that's what we want to do in real estate. We want to make sure that what we're doing is innovative, and it can be creative. We just want to make sure that it doesn't engender the wrath of real estate brokers and agents and so forth. So use the term, if you ever have to use either one, use the term innovative, especially when you're talking to somebody in the real estate sales business. So let's talk first about lease optioning. Well, lease optioning is not a bad thing. It's a good thing. In other words, the lease option works this way. You take a property and you say, well, I want to make the most money I can think of, or most money I can. So what do I have to do, and what can I think of to make more money? Well, here's what we'll do. With a person, it's so hard to find somebody with a great down payment and great credit, and it's difficult to find somebody who can go out and get a mortgage loan and give us the top dollar. Anyone who can qualify for a mortgage loan and has enough money for a down payment, they're going to want to get a house cheaper. They're going to want me to pay a lot more of the cost. But here's what we'll do. I'll let the people without the sufficient down payment into the property, and so that they don't have to qualify for a loan. That'll make it easy to dispose of this property. And what we'll do is I'll just bring them into the house so they get in love with it, and it's difficult for them to back out and so forth, and let them lease it for a while. And then at the end of some term, I will give them the right to buy the house, as long as they give me whatever the fair market value is that I determine, and as long as they give me all the money I want. That way I don't have to reduce the price to do this, and it's a great way to get the house sold, because I can wait a year or two before I get paid off, and that way. But here's what happens in a lease option. You know, the idea is that lease option is a great thing. But if you go to Texas, you'll find out that the state of Texas has virtually outlawed lease options. It's not actually the truth, because you can still do lease options in Texas under certain situations. But Texas and Maryland have determined that the lease option, being an executory contract, is not fair to all parties. So as a result, it's illegal. But we don't want any of that. We want to be able to do something with the people who don't have quite enough money and can't qualify for a loan, but we want to make money off of them. We want to be able to get them into the property. We want to be able to sell the property for maximum value, and so on. So here's the thing. The option to purchase will always be, if you're going to do a lease option, and people will tell you it should be in two separate forms to avoid lenders due on sale issues. Well, that's not true. I mean, that's what you hear from the gurus who don't know how to do what we do. The gurus will say, well, make sure that the lease is in one form, one contract, and that the option is in another contract, and don't show that to anybody. Well, that doesn't make any difference whether you do or not. If somebody's going to sue you on the basis of it being an unauthorized transfer of the property, they're going to say, it doesn't matter, you got the property leased out and you create an option on it. And the person that you're trying to, the tenant that you're trying to get out of the property for non-payment is going to go to an attorney, and the attorney is going to say, well, hey, we got him, let's call it a lease option. Well, it's not really, because I have the lease in one document and the option in another. The attorney says, that's okay. We will tell the judge that it's a lease option and let them sort it out. And then the judge is going to go in and say, well, you got a lease and you got an option. Sounds like a lease option to me. So that whole concept is not valid as if you've been to court on trying to evict somebody who has an attorney who is trying to protect them under the standpoint that it's not an option. It doesn't work for you. So here's what you do. You want to put somebody in the property where they are not able to claim that they have an equitable interest in the property. And obviously, with a lease option, that option and the option fee that you pay and the rent credits that you pay every month that are supposed to apply to the purchase price at some point in time, that is equity. And it doesn't matter whether you have the lease option on one page or not, it's still equity in the property. And when you have equity in the property, you can't be evicted because you're an owner. You don't evict an owner, you have to foreclose on an owner. So trust me when I say I've been there a few times and done that and rode a few bad horses and some bad rodeos. That's not going to work for you. However, if you want it to work for you, let's put somebody in the property and not give them any equity, but give them all of the benefits of owning from day one. And rather than just leasing the property to them, you can't take an income tax write-off on a lease option. Even though you have equity, you still don't qualify under Section 163 of the Internal Revenue Code. So let's give them something worth a lot more than a lease option would be. Let's put this buyer in the property, and let's give them 100% of all the benefits of ownership, all of the fee simple bundle of rights. We're going to give them the income tax write-off, use, occupancy, possession, water rights, mineral rights, everything that you can have under the fee simple bundle of real estate rights. But let's not give them any equity until such time as he's ready to pay off the existing financing and pay us whatever equity we've gotten on the property, pay us back, and maybe then we'll share whatever the future appreciation is. So understand that the IRS will support somebody claiming that they're an owner of the property under those circumstances, because under those circumstances, the transaction and the property qualify under Section 163 as a personal residence, and because of revenue ruling, you can write these down if you want to, or I'll send them to you, 92-105, that says that anybody who is a beneficiary in one of these things called a land trust, an Illinois type land trust, we're going to treat as the owner of the property for all tax purposes. So that means that you don't have any equity in the property, but you have a full and complete access to income tax write-off for property tax and interest on the mortgage. So that's the way you would do a lease option. Now, you don't want there to be an option. We don't want to give this guy an option to buy the property at some specific value at some specific date in the future, because when you do that, you're actually creating a contract for sale arrangement. You're creating a layaway plan, kind of, and we don't want to do that. So here's what we do in order to avoid doing that. We say that there's a resident in the property who is actually leasing the property from the trustee on a triple net lease. He's only a lessee, but the IRS says because he's a beneficiary in a trust that owns the property and he's the one making all the payments, that he can treat himself 100% as the owner of the property. So in order to avoid those hassles, what we're going to do is we're going to say, well, we're not going to give you an option to buy. If you want to buy the property, you're going to have to pay full fair market value, whatever it is at the time that our contract expires. So we're going to do a 3-year agreement. At the end of the 3 years, if you want to buy the property, it's okay. You don't need an option to buy it. We're just going to let you buy it. If you're the one who's offering the most for it, you can buy it then. But at that particular time, since you are a 90% owner in the trust, that means that whatever that fair market value is, the trust owes you 90% of it. So as a result, the property is valued, let's say, from easy figures, $100,000, and there's a $50,000 loan on it, and you've got 90% of that equity, $50,000. That means that you can buy the property now for what, $60,000 instead of the $100,000 value. So understand that the concept of the lease option is a good one. But what you want to do, if you're going to do a lease option, is do it in a whole different way. In other words, at the end of this agreement, Mr. Optionee, which you are not, you're a buyer of a personal property interest in a trust. At the end of this agreement, you can have the property, but you got to pay the same as anyone else would. However, at that time, the trust itself owes you a lot of money, depending on your percentage of ownership of the trust. So when I do my transactions, I always do equity shares. I always virtually always put somebody in as 50-50, undivided interest in the property, so that at the end, the property went from 100 to 200,000. There's 100,000 equity to be shared between us, so they can buy the house for 200,000 minus the 50,000 that they're owed by the trust. Now, I hope that it kind of makes sense, especially to the new people. Because what you need to understand about what we do is it's not what people know about. You go to an attorney, for example, virtually any attorney, and ask him if he knows anything about land trust. Well, most attorneys will say, oh, yeah, sure, I know what a land trust is. That's a trust that it's put land in. Well, that's not at all what a land trust really is. But they'll tell you they know something. But when you push them to it, they're going to recommend that their clients not do it because they don't understand it. They don't realize that a land trust is a completely different animal than any other kind of inter vivos trust. They don't realize at that point that in a land trust, the trustee has no particular powers of any kind, of any significance, unless the beneficiaries default or something, and that it is the beneficiaries of that trust who are 100% in charge of the trustee telling it what to do, and it's the beneficiaries who must manage the property, take care of it, collect payments, make disbursements, and so on. So the attorney's not going to know that, and when he suddenly comes across something he doesn't know, he's going to replace that in the mind of his client with something he does know about, and he'll say, well, you don't need to do that. That's just too convoluted and too complex. Let's just do a wraparound mortgage. I mean, it's just as good, but you don't have to worry about it. Now, the due on sale clause, don't worry about that. Banks hardly ever foreclose because of the due on sale clause. I mean, why would a bank want to foreclose on a house that they're getting paid on every month? That doesn't make any sense. Well, if it happens to be an FHA loan and they don't foreclose when they're supposed to, their FHA provider shuts them off, and that can be very expensive. So understand it from that standpoint. So that's a lease option. Just know that if you want to create the same effect and benefit of a lease option, put the property in a title holding trust, and then let the tenant lease the property from the trustee and charge that tenant 100% of the costs of whatever the monthly payments are, taxes, insurance, and principal and interest and HOA and everything else, and then throw another couple $100 in there for positive cash flow to you. Now you think, well, hold on a second. Now that's going to be a lot more than a lease payment. Yeah, it is, but it's going to be a lot less for the tenant who's paying it. And the reason for that is when the tenant makes this payment with 100% of the right of the income tax write-off, a higher monthly payment is a lower after-tax monthly payment because of the income tax write-off. So and here's my favorite little conundrum that I always like to throw out there. So If we're in an audience of 100 or 200 attendees, half of them are going to get it right away. The other half don't quite understand it. Make it very clear. If you're renting, if you're in a 1/3 tax bracket, which most of us are relatively, in a 1/3 tax bracket, and you're making a rent payment of $1,000 a month, and the government says we're going to take 1/3 of everything you earn, well, you got to go to work and earn $1,500 in order to pay $1,000 worth of rent, because the government says if you earn $1,500 and we take 1/3 of it, that'll leave you $1,000 to pay your landlord. So you're renting for $1,000, but the after-tax cost of that is 50% more. Because a lot of people will say, well, if you're renting for $1,000, then you're going to be paying after-tax $1,333 because the government only takes 1/3. Well, they don't take 1/3 of your rent. They take 1/3 of what you own or what you earn. So you got to go earn a lot more. So which is cheaper, $1,200 rent or a house payment of $1,500? Well, obviously the $1,500 is a lot cheaper after tax, because if you got $1,000 a month rent, why pay $1,500 if your landlord only wants $1,200? So think about that. Now let's move on just a little bit. And we know the downside of the lease option. It's one of the most litigious aspects of the real estate business. There's not too many done anymore, but even most states in their Department of Realty still have lease option forms, and they have on their purchase offer, they have a section you can check off for doing a lease option. Lease options are not a good thing. They are opposed to the Garden St. Germain Act. A lease option is a triggers the due on sale clause with a loan. And any lease for more than 3 years triggers the due on sale clause, with or without an option, and so on. But putting a property in a title holding land trust and leasing it out is not a due on sale violation. The trust lease is it doesn't give anyone a right to claim equity, because they both declare in the trust document itself that no beneficiary has any equity in the property. The equity is held legally and equitably by the title, is held legally and equitably by the trustee, not the beneficiary. So the trustee holds the equity in the property for the benefit of the beneficiaries, but they themselves only have a personal property interest. So think about it. Let's go on to another. It's a contract of deed. I don't want to spend any time on these. I just want to make sure that everybody knows the difference. You got the same pitfalls, same downside in a contract for deed. It definitely is a violation of the due on sale clause, unless you're dealing with a lender who's doing the contract for deed, like you would with a Cal Vet loan or a Tex Vet loan or an Alaska Vet loan or a Michigan Vet loan. There's few states that have these veterans loans that they do with a contract for deed. Contract for deed is a layaway plan. In other words, you say, I'm going to sign a contract to pay you, but you don't have to give me the deed until our contract is over with. That's a contract for deed. So here's my contract, give me the deed after I've fulfilled it. So we can accomplish exactly the same thing with the equity holding trust transfer. You know, all the contract for deed is you live in the house for a while, and once you get it all paid for, you can have it, you can own it. Well, we can do exactly the same thing in our program, but in our program, along the way, the contractee gets 100% of the income tax write-off for the mortgage loan, the property tax. The contractee is protected against liens and lawsuits and judgments and dower actions and marital disputes and probate and on, which a contract for deed can't do. So let's move on to the wraparound, just so you know what a wraparound is. That's just a mortgage that wraps around other mortgages. On a wraparound mortgage, what happens is you come in and you say, well, here's a $200,000 house. There's $150,000 owed on the first mortgage. And if I want to give it to you so that, or sell it to you so that you don't have to make a down payment, I'll carry the other 50. Now I want, for the 50,000 I'm carrying, I want 20% interest. You go, oh, wait a second, that's way too much. Oh, okay. What would be better? I don't know, 9%. Oh, great, okay. Well, what I'll do is loan you $200,000 at 9% instead of 50,000 at 20%. Well, do some calculations sometimes and see which is the better deal, because $200,000 at 9% is going to work out to more than $150,000, or excuse me, 50,000 at 20%. So that's a wraparound mortgage. It's not necessarily the best deal, and you don't have to calculate it that way. I mean, you could do it and give somebody a bargain, but the way to do it is to put the property in a trust, let them have. The only reason they want that wraparound mortgage is so that they don't have to come up with as big a down payment. They may not have to qualify for as much loan, and on and on. Well, you can do the same thing with the equity holding trust transfer, but at the same time protect the property against liens and suits and judgments and marital dispute actions and on and on and on, probate and so forth, without the downsides. The equity share, that's just a matter of two people go on title 50-50, usually if that's 50-50. Go on title 50-50, undivided, half interest, as tenants in common. One party makes the down payment, the other party makes the payments, and then at the end of the contract period, they agree that they'll sell the property and share the profits. Well, that's what we do. I always do equity shares, but I don't do them with a transfer of title. I do them with the transfer of beneficial interest in the equity holding trust. In other words, somebody comes in, they say, okay, I'm going to let you in maybe for no down payment or maybe just $5,000, whatever it is, and I'm going to give you 50% of the beneficial interest in the trust whose trustee owns the property. And that way you can have 100% of the house, 100% of future appreciation, 100% of the tax write-off, 100% of everything. I said future appreciation, I didn't mean that. I mean 100% of any equity you have at start. And then at the end, whatever appreciation's been, we'll just split it proportionately with our 50% each beneficiary interest in the trust. So it works the same way, except that under normal equity share, there's a big problem with income tax write-off. If you check out IRS Section 280A, they'll give you the rules for income tax write-off for fractional interest in real estate. And if you're not going to live in the house and so forth, there are some very stringent rules, and the maximum you could expect would be 50% of the income tax write-off. But we can do exactly the same thing with the equity holding trust and give somebody 100% of the income tax write-off. Now, on that subject, here's another one of those conundrums that I love. That is, I get the question all the time, well, what about, if I've got the property and I'm going to put a 50-50 or 90% resident beneficiary in the property, what about my own income tax write-off? I mean, I'm making the payments on the loan, or I'm responsible for them, and I need that tax write-off to offset my income. Well, the fact is, first of all, you don't need the tax write-off if you don't have any income. And whether you have any income or not, the only income that you'll be paying tax on is whatever your positive cash flow is. So if you've got the property in a trust, you've got income being paid, or your monthly payments being paid to a third-party collection service, that third-party collection service is going to collect the payments and make all the proper disbursements, and whatever is left over at the end of the month, they're going to send you as your positive cash flow. And that's all you got to pay tax on, is the money that you actually earned. That's all. Now, if you want to, you could take 100% of the income tax write-off, even though your resident beneficiary is taking 100% of the income tax write-off for himself. But what good would it do you, since you have to declare all of that income, and then you use your write-off to offset the income so you don't have to pay any tax on it? So either way you go, you're going to be paying tax on the positive cash flow. So it doesn't matter whether you take it or don't take it. If you're playing fair with the IRS, it's the same thing, one way or the other. The only income tax you're going to owe is on the money you make. And if you're not making any, you don't owe any. So if I've got a property and you're in it as my resident beneficiary and you're claiming the tax write-off for my mortgage interest in my property tax, which you have a right to do under 162 under Revenue Ruling 92105, you got the absolute right. That doesn't deprive me of my right to take the tax write-off. I'm the one making it, that's on the, not making the payments, but I'm the one that's on the mortgage loan. So nobody's going to question that. And the only taxes I'm going to have to pay is on positive cash flow. So it doesn't matter whether you take it and get the tax write-off, or I take it and take the tax write-off. Either way, I'm just going to pay tax on positive cash flow. So don't lose track of that. That becomes a very, very powerful part of your selling presentation, because you'll invariably be asked by the person you're trying to get the property from, yeah, well, I think, sounds good, but I have to have that tax write-off. Okay, well, there's nothing saying you can't take it. Well, wait a minute, I thought you said that you were going to take the tax write-off. Well, it doesn't matter, because the only thing you owe taxes on is whatever your positive cash flow is. You can either take it and write it off so you don't have to pay it, or not take it and not need to write it off. Now, I'm sure I confused a bunch of people, but hey, I don't care. Get with it. Yes, I do. If you have any problem with that, give me a call or send me an email. So anyway, the rest of it just goes into the benefits of equity sharing and what have you. So I'd like you guys to think about the equity holding trust as a vehicle for equity sharing. And that makes it really, really nice when you do that. Because there is no reason to give away the entire farm when somebody is happy to have half of it. In other words, when I do a transaction, I'll always try to do 50-50 equity share. I'm going to give you the house. You don't have to make a down payment. You don't have to qualify for a mortgage loan. And I'm going to make sure your payments are reasonable, and especially after tax, going to be cheaper than they would be if you rented. So I'm going to do all of this for you. And the only thing that I want out of it is to have you either finance it in your own name at the end of our agreement, or sell it. And whatever appreciation there might have been, if there is to be any, then we can just split it 50-50. How's that? Well, it sounds good to 95% of the people. Now, the other 5%, they'll come back and say, oh, I like the idea, but we really wanted to own a house. Oh, no, you have 100% of the ownership. The only thing I want out of it is 50% of any future appreciation, if there is any, at the end of that time. Oh, well, that's better. Or they might say, well, wait a second, I don't want to split anything. I'm against that partnering kind of thing and so forth. Well, it's okay. We don't have to split anything. I can give you 100% of the beneficial interest. But it's going to cost you another $15,000 up front, and we're going to have to raise the payment by about 30%. And then you hear, well, tell me about that first deal again. So anyway, guys, remember that. This is some important stuff. So let's do this now. Let's go back. I'm going to leave that one up on the screen, and we're just going to talk now about some other stuff, if that's okay with you. Let's do this. Here's what I want to talk about. I want to talk about the concept of using this program. I want to talk about this new flyer that we've got. I'll just say a little. As a matter of fact, I think I can find it here if I clear my head just a little bit. Let me find it on wherever I have to find it, I think. God, I hate Windows 10. Don't ever go get Windows 10. It'll screw you up. Hang on a minute. I'm losing my mind here. There we go. Okay. That's not going to be what I want. Desktop. There we go. And let's see. Ta-da. I can see everything on my desktop except what I want. Control panel, magic squares, team viewer, Windows 5. Hold on, guys. It gets better. Okay, advertising, I don't think it's there. Flipping, getting money on property. No, 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 no. I'm not going to hang you on here much longer, so network. I want to go to admin. Frank download documentation manual waste box. Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, maybe I can do it this way. Bear with me, guys. Diane knows how fumble-fingered I am when it comes to this thing. So, all right, here we go. The desktop. I want to see the desktop. I want to go to recently stuff. Download VHC letter, get started, equity holding transfer, access to doc manual, bios, resell material. I might have to give up on my little search project here. Well, let's do that, just for the sake of time. Here's the brochure. It's a three-part, and I want you to email me so I can send it to you, and it's pretty good. The first page is talks about the benefits of the trust, and it's not particularly colorful beauty, but it's a nicely done and properly organized advertising piece. So anybody on any level, buyer or seller or real estate broker or agent or mortgage broker or agent or a financial consultant, you can take a look at it and get their questions answered pretty quickly. And it's attractive enough that even in black and white that you can comfortably leave it with somebody. But it'll tell them about the Dodd-Frank Act, why it is that we don't violate the Dodd-Frank Act for seller financing, why it is that we don't violate the Current St. Germain Act relative to the due on sale clause. It'll talk about the benefits that they can get from the program. For example, it talks about the buyer's quality of credit and upfront costs are determined solely by the seller. Fast closing. We can close a transaction in a week or even less by request. The trust beneficiaries are treated by the IRS as full owners of the real estate, therefore being entitled to 100% of all ownership benefits, including income tax deduction for the underlying mortgage. Fractional ownership made easy, equity sharing or vacation time sharing made simple. On the idea of equity sharing, obviously, that's two people owning two percentages of the trust and agreeing that they'll share the net profits in proportion to those percentages of ownership at the end. But you can also use the same thing in something sort of similar. If you're going to pick up a property, you can use this to do a timeshare. In other words, if you got a nice house on the beach, you can put the property in the equity holding trust and have, 9 or 10 or 20 beneficiaries in that trust, and all of them can share the time to be spent in the property, just like any timeshare. And if you do that and you've got the property and you're bringing people in like that, they can pay you $5,000 up front a piece. They can pay you, more than a normal rent payment would ever be on a vacation property like that, and you can make a ton of money. Just think you got 20 people coming into the property, and each one of them paying you $10,000 up front. It's a pretty good chunk of money on an income property. And they're also going to be paying, because there's the accumulation of all of them, even if it's $1,000 a month, you got 20, and that's $20,000 a month. I mean, that's some very rough calculations here. I'm not trying to go to any specific price value, but the concept holds for any property as long as it's something that people would really be interested in being able to use for a couple weeks a year for vacation purposes and so on. Fractional ownership, equity sharing, so on, thousands of transactions completed since 1985. That's us. And the beauty of what we do is we've been doing this since 1985, for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of houses and buyers and sellers and so forth, without any failure in any jurisdiction relative to the legality and the practicality of what we do. And then a lot of people try We've had 3 federal lawsuits, and we prevailed in every one of them. And we've had lots of discontent in terms of evicting people out of the property, but there's not a single one of them who were able to forestall the eviction process and trying to force a foreclosure. And that's biggie. If you own income property and you've been around a while, you know what I mean. First thing somebody does if they're a tenant in the property is they run to an attorney who knows how to get free rent and get their fees paid by you at your cost, and let the defaulting tenant just hang on until you finally not only pay them, but you also cover costs of eviction and unlawful detainer action and quiet title action and everything else. So that doesn't happen with our program. And also just thousands of like-minded networking trainee members throughout the United States. Some of our people, like, are listening to me right now. Some have cash to partner with people who have properties. Others have properties to partner with people who have cash. Other people might not have either one, but we can show you how to get them pretty easy. And some have both. So the whole idea is this program that we promote is, without a doubt, singularly the best thing that's happened in quote-unquote creative real estate financing ever. I mean, think of a way to do creative financing that completely eliminates all of the problems that have existed heretofore without any argument. I mean, it doesn't violate the due on sale clause. It doesn't violate Dodd-Frank. It doesn't create an executory contract. It doesn't create a lease option. It doesn't provide equity to the tenant who might default someday and claim equity in order to forestall his eviction by forcing a foreclosure. It doesn't do any of those things. It's fully and completely protective. It's fully and completely legal. It's everything that anybody in the real estate business in general would ever have dreamed of having at their disposal. Now, let's talk about people who are real estate agents who say, well, yeah, I don't want to do anything with properties that are over encumbered. That's foolish. Why not? There's money there. I want all the over encumbered properties. If anybody knows of an over encumbered property that somebody wants out of, call me. I'll take it, because I can get it without any money out of pocket, because it's not worth as much as owed on it. So they'll give it to me. So call me, I'll take it. And then who am I going to have make the payments? Well, I'm going to put somebody in who loves the house, and they love the area, and they love the pool in the backyard, and they love the gated community, whatever it is, who's happy to pay less than rent, because I can give them the income tax write-off on the same property. So just know that the equity holding transfer is, in a sense, not totally, if you're explaining it to somebody, it's not unlike a long-term escrow. You know, in an escrow process, whether you're in an area that uses title companies for escrow or independent escrow companies or both, the idea of an escrow is this. It's like you're betting on a football game, and you're betting with Joe Bloke, and you're not sure that if you win the bet that Joe Bloke will pay you, you and Joe appoint somebody as a third party to hold the money. And that way you don't have to worry about Joe, because the third party is going to give the money to whoever wins the bet. And Joe doesn't have to worry about you. Well, that's what an escrow is. When a buyer comes in and says, I want to buy that house, well, then the transaction is put into escrow. And for that short period of time, the property is actually owned by the escrow officer. In other words, you give the legal title to the escrow officer, and the seller retains the equitable title so that his income tax benefits are not adversely affected during the process and so forth. And then once the buyer comes in with all of his money, then the legal title can be given along with the equitable title to the buyer. But in the meantime, during escrow, neither party can do anything to harm the other party because of the escrow holding the bet. So that's what this land trust is when you think about it. Think about it in terms of an escrow, long-term escrow. You give the property to this third party trustee. the third-party trustee now owns the property, but unlike an escrow, where the escrow officer only holds the legal title and leaves the equitable title with the seller, with a land trust, you're giving both the legal title and the equitable title to the trustee to hold for 3, 4, 5, 10 years, 20 years, whatever. And during that time, any one of the beneficiaries who wants to deal in any manner with anything having to do with the property or the title has to be sure that the trustee will sign off on it. And the trustee can't sign off on anything unless all of the beneficiaries or both of the beneficiaries are in complete agreement. So as a result, it protects everybody from liens and lawsuits and judgments and dower actions and marital disputes and death and dying and probate and all of that kind of stuff. There's never been a safer way to hold or own real estate, period. And the beauty of it all is that what we're doing is saying, oh, you got problems with your real estate holdings. Why don't you turn your real estate into personal estate? Well, you know, that's a little difficult. Real estate is real estate, and personal property is not real estate. Well, it can be. How so? Put the property in a title holding land trust, and the IRS says that for all tax purposes, that personal property beneficial interest that you own in that trust can be treated as if it were real property. In other words, you can, and we insist, that you treat it as real property for tax purposes. If you owe taxes, we want them. If you get a privilege, a tax privilege, we want you to have that. So as a result, you're actually doing a magic trick where you're converting your real estate ownership to ownership of personal estate. Well, personal estate is a whole different thing. It's got different laws, different regulations, and so forth. So all of a sudden now, anytime you can take a piece of real estate and convert it to personal estate, but still get all of the benefits and advantages and features and regulations that you'd have as real estate, that's a beautiful, magical thing to do. And that's what we do. So this allows you to inexpensively shield your home or your income properties from creditor judgments, litigation via title holding Illinois private real estate trust. So how much better can it get? Think of this word. Write it down if you would. Cognitive rigidity. Cognitive rigidity. It is the #1 killer of dreams of financial success and freedom. And what it is one's refusal to accept the new and superior way when it presents itself. You know, there were people that say, well, I would never fly in one of those stupid airplanes. You know, I've been driving a horse and buggy for a long time, and then they come out with that car thing, and I picked up on that, but I'm not going to go flying off the ground. I mean, them things are just not safe. Well, yeah, but you can get from New York to Los Angeles in just a couple of hours. I mean, I don't care. I'm going to take 3 weeks like I always have and go by covered wagon. Or 3 years of covered wagon, I guess, because I'm not accepting that newfangled stuff. Well, I mean, that's what happened. I remember my mother, bless her heart, my mother refused to have a dishwasher. She said, I think, you know, the only way you're going to get crud off your dishes is to wash them and with soap and water and scour them. You can't stick them in a box and then turn on some water and expect your dishes to be clean. So she went for all of her life. I mean, well long after I was married, I bought her a dishwasher for Christmas, and she reluctantly used it. But the one thing that we could never get her to do was use a garbage disposal. She felt that was horrible, to be putting garbage down your drain. I mean, what are you going to do? I mean, that's going to clog up in no time, and why on earth would anybody want to stick stuff down their own sink like that? Well, that's cognitive rigidity. After she finally got her garbage disposal and her microwave oven, which was a horrible thing, she didn't want any part of that, and she got her washing machine and so forth, she began using them way late in life. And she wished she'd have known about that all of her life, but she didn't. She refused to accept what turned out to be inevitable, but her cognitive rigidity prevented her from being a part of advancing society. So guys, this is what happens with us. It's the biggest enemy we have out there is the cognitive rigidity of people who don't understand and people who are relying on old rules and old regulations that don't exist anymore. And unfortunately, some of the brightest, most well-educated people in our society are a victim of that same cognitive rigidity, and that happens to be the attorney. You have no idea how many fights I've had with attorneys over the years. We don't argue much with attorneys lately for some reason, but for years, every time I tried to do a transaction, somebody go to their attorney, and the attorney would say, "No, I don't believe in that. I mean, that's crazy. Let's do, this thing will violate a due on sale clause. Let's do a wraparound or a contract for deed or a lease option or an equity share." Well, there's nothing that would more directly violate a due on sale clause than those things, but that's what they would say, and then I would have to talk to the attorney. And early on, I learned that it doesn't do any good to argue with an attorney. And the reason you cannot argue with an attorney and win ever, whether you're right or wrong, or even if they know you're right or wrong, it doesn't matter because there's no jury there. There's no judge. So they're going to argue and argue and argue until the judge declares a victory one way or the other. And when there's no judge, they're not going to ever concede. They don't do that. Attorneys are taught and inculcated with that concept of no concession, no what, take no prisoners and alive anyway. So guys, that's kind of it today. I just wanted to talk about, the various aspects of creative real estate and how it relates to what we do. So I hope that, especially for the new people that are on right now, I hope that kind of clears up some of those issues because it's important that you know that. Let's see what we got here. Hold on just a second. Okay, questions. Let's see if we got anybody with questions. Look at that. Mike Minahan has left, but he had a question. He said, "Good morning, Bill. I hope you and Gil are doing great." Mike, thank you very much. We're doing super doggone duper. Bill McKee says, "Is there supposed to be more than one slide to this presentation?" Well, yeah. If somebody else has had the problem of only looking at one slide, maybe he asked that before I started. And Kim Fisher says, "I lost an audio connection," and that was about 9:45 that she lost audio. So if somebody else did, let me know. Kim says, "Not sure if it's just me or the class." And then she said, "It's back." Hi, Kim. How you doing? Speaking of our new people, back on now. And then she gives me a smiley face. And then she says, "Thank you." You're welcome, Kim. I mean, it was a lot of trouble, but I fixed it for you. No, I didn't. It wasn't us, I guess. It must have been your computer who kicked something out there. So let's see if we have any more questions or concern. That's the question board. Let's go to, let's see, audience view, screen sharing. Let's go to the chat room and see if anybody put anything in the chat. Nope, no chats today. So, and I'm going to shut off my screen here. Hold on. Here we go. Ta-da. And that's kind of that part, I guess. So let me see. We want to go to, there we go. So guys, that's it. If you've got any other questions, now's the time. Dr. Amant says, "Do you only have the second slide up?" Oh, it says you do only have the second slide up on the screen. Now that's weird. I could have been looking at that this whole time and realized it, Carl. I didn't know. Huh. Well, anyway, if you listened intently, I'll tell you what, Diane, if you're on there, I think you are, but Did you notice that there was only one slide on the screen?
No, Bill, you're okay. Once you started going through the brochure, that's when you just left that one slide up. But if you look,
Oh,
Loy has a question.
you got it.
Okay, do you see Loy has a question?
Loy Wilson. Yeah, can you give him his mic?
Okay, Loy, go ahead.
Hi, Loy.
Morning, Bill.
What's going on there, buddy?
Oh, not a whole lot. I have a question, or a couple of questions.
All right.
One is what you call the bundle of rights. Isn't that personal property?
No, the bundle of rights has to do with the bundle of rights and real estate ownership. It's the fee simple bundle of rights.
Mm-hmm.
The bundle of rights is use, occupancy, possession, quiet enjoyment, merchantability, marketability, water rights, mineral rights, the right to do nothing, and the right to lease, sublease, rent, or leave vacant. That's the bundle of rights.
Okay, so I buy mineral rights. So how am I buying
the
that?
bundle of rights will include mineral rights. The bundle of rights includes riparian and littoral water rights. That means streams or pools, and also mineral rights. However, a deed, on the deed, it can minimize the mineral rights or the littoral or riparian rights if the deed says so. It says you own this property all except mineral deposits beneath 10 feet subsurface or something.
That's
but
when
yeah,
you're selling and holding the mineral rights. That's when you're selling and holding the mineral rights. Correct?
well, I'm saying that a deed, when you transfer a property, you can keep the mineral rights if you want to, and sometimes the mineral rights are held by the county, so they're not a part of the transfer. But it has to be in the legal description. Any holding of mineral rights has to be declared. I mean, if it doesn't say that you don't have the mineral rights, then the bundle of rights would include them.
Well, what I'm saying again is I buy mineral rights. I don't buy the surface land. I don't buy the real estate.
Well, that's a whole different situation. Now, when you're buying mineral rights alone, essentially then you're buying something other than real estate. You're buying the mineral rights on the real estate. So the deed to the property, if you take a look at whoever is holding the deed, the legal description is going to declare that the mineral rights are not included in this transfer because they're owned by the city or the state or the county or Loy Wilson.
Well, I understand what you're saying there, but
so
what's
the conflict that you're seeing? What's conflict that you're having?
Well, you keep saying that it's part of the real property.
Mineral rights are part of the real property purchase or sale, and unless they're excluded in the transfer. If I buy one of your houses and the deed to me and the legal description in the county recorder's office doesn't say otherwise, then and I find oil on the property, it's going to be my oil. But chances are I'm not going to be able to have that oil because it probably belongs to somebody else like you before I bought the property. But that's got to be shown in the legal description. The legal description tells you exactly what it is you're buying or what's being sold. And most often, especially in Texas, it's not going to show mineral rights as being part of the bundle of rights in that particular transfer.
Well, again, you're saying when I'm buying the property, but I'm not buying the property.
Nobody is even talking about buying property.
Straight from the owner.
Nobody's talking about buying property. I'm saying if you buy a property, you're going to be acquiring that property and all of the literal and riparian and mineral rights, unless the title shows otherwise. It'll tell you in the legal description whether you own the mineral rights or not. And in California especially, you don't own any mineral rights normally, because that's owned by
in the state of Texas, Bill.
I'm sorry?
You can buy mineral rights. You don't have to buy the real property. You can buy the mineral rights from the owner.
Loy, pardon me for saying so. That has nothing to do with what I'm saying. What we're talking about is real estate. Sure, you can go out and be in another business. You can have a taco stand or anything else, or be in the oil and mineral rights business. I mean, if you're doing a purchase of oil rights or mineral rights in general, that has anything to do with real estate. If you own an oil well, you have the right, if you buy the right, you have the right to put your derrick on the property as long as the person who owns the property agrees. But you can have the oil rights, and if the person doesn't agree, you can go drill next door if you want to. But that has nothing to do with what we're talking about. What I'm saying is the bundle of rights in real estate ownership includes the right to sell the property or not sell the property, the right to rent it out, lease it out, includes the water rights, mineral rights, riparian and littoral, and so on, unless it's designated or stipulated otherwise in the title recording in the public recorder's office.
I understand that. I understand that.
Okay. Yeah, as far as buying mineral rights, I envy you. I wish I had some money to buy some mineral rights, but I don't. But it has nothing to do with what we're talking about. What we're talking about right now is solely to do with acquiring and disposing of real estate through the vehicle called the equity holding, title holding, Illinois type land trust.
Okay. I'll stop at that point. You still haven't answered my question. And
well, give me the question then.
Is the mineral rights personal property or is it real property?
Well, see, I would say that mineral rights are personal property. I don't know, but it's a part of the bundle of rights in real estate ownership, so I would presume that it's probably categorized as, I don't know.
Okay. I don't really know either. That's the reason I'm asking the question. So,
well, but it's not a question that I would ever come across, so I don't know. I don't feel guilty about not knowing the answer. It's just that I don't know.
I'm not asking you to feel guilty. I just, I'm going to have to go to, I guess.
You got to go to somebody smarter than I am. That's all.
Okay.
Now, good luck finding that person. All right, Loy. I wish I could answer your question. I don't know what value answering it would have to you, but I'd give anything if I knew the answer. So I guarantee you within an hour I will know the answer.
Well, email me back. Email me back.
I'll talk to somebody smarter than I am. That's pretty easy to do.
Hey,
Thank you.
This 3-page thing you were talking about, you going to email that out to us, or do we need to call you?
Well, I'll mail it out to everybody else, but not to you. You're too much of a smart ass for me. Loy, I love you. I love you. Absolutely.
I'd be a smart ass. I don't know the answer.
You're a good guy, Loy. Yeah, I'll send it to you. You don't even have to ask me. Everyone else is going to send me an email, but with you, it'll be in your hands within 30 minutes.
You're a good guy.
All right, thanks, Loy.
You bet. Bye.
Okay, let's see. We got Carl who says, I was not one with a comment or problem. All great here. Thank you, Carl. Appreciate that. You only have a second slide up. Okay, gotcha. Okay, anybody else with a question? You can do a couple things. You can raise your hand, and then I'll see it on my screen. Let's see if I got any hands raised right now. Now, the way you raise your hand is just click on that little hand, and there aren't any hands. So I'm just going to bail out of here, guys. So I'll see you all next week. I hope you got something out of today. And once again, I want to thank you all for being here, and also welcome our newest member, Kim. And let's see, Kim Fisher, appreciate you being here. And Kim Fisher did have a question. I think we already took care of that. Okay, guys, thanks again. If you need me, you know where to get me, and I'm always here. And if you want a copy of that 3-part brochure, you're going to have to email me. bg@landtrust.net, and I'll shoot it to you, as it were. And Diane, do you have any parting words for us this morning?
No, sir. I'm good to go.
Okay, well, good. Well, we'll see you and everyone else next Saturday then, if not sooner.